In this video, you will learn about risk assessment. Before we get into the topic, we need to know the learning outcome for risk assessment. After studying this topic, the students should be able to describe the concept of risk assessment in developing insurance products, list and explain aspects of risk assessment for application in risk management, explain risk model and its framework for risk management. What is risk assessment? Risk assessment is a primary tool in managing the health and safety of workers and others. The definition of a risk assessment is a systematic process of identifying hazards and evaluating any associated risks within a workplace, then implementing reasonable control measures to remove or reduce them. When completing a risk assessment, it is important to clearly define some keywords. An accident is an unplanned event that results in loss. A hazard is something that has the potential to cause harm. A risk is the likelihood and the severity of a negative occurrence, injury, ill health, damage, loss resulting from a hazard. Why are risk assessments important? Risk assessment is a straightforward and structured method of ensuring the risks to the health, safety and well-being of employees and others are suitably eliminated, reduced, or controlled. The main purpose of risk assessments are to identify health and safety hazards and evaluate the risks presented within the workplace, to evaluate the effectiveness and suitability of existing control measures, to ensure additional controls, including procedural, are implemented wherever the remaining risk is considered to be anything other than low, to prioritize further resources, if needed, to ensure the above. Assess risks. Objective: assess exposure to loss from key risks. Understand risk dependencies. Deliverables: understanding of gross and net risk exposures. Development of risk models for scenario testing. Methodology: qualitative models, quantitative models. Aspect of risk assessment: quantitative versus qualitative assessment. It is normally preferable to be able to quantify the frequency and severity of each risk to the greatest extent possible. However, for some risks this is not fully practical. For example, impact of a product recall on the reputation of an organization. Example, the assessment of credit risk is frequently conducted using sophisticated risk models based on substantial amounts of underlying experience. Experience data. Risks vary in their impact as a result of differences in their probability of occurrence as well as in their severity. For example, credit risk. The probability of default of a rated security will tend to vary depending on the rating and prevailing economic conditions. The severity of loss given default will also vary with the prevailing economic conditions. Underwriting risk. For disability income insurance, the probability of disablement varies considerably due to risk factors such as age, sex and occupational class. The severity of the loss depends on the length of time the claimant remains disabled and unable to return to work. This in turn will depend on the policy definition of disability and the economic conditions. Sufficient of loss experience data. Sufficient or credible volumes of loss experience data can also be gained by using a study period. The use of a longer period has a number of pros and cons that the risk manager must weigh. If the longer study period involved life insurance mortality, these might include: period now includes an unusual flu epidemic. Length of period masks an underlying mortality trend of mortality improvement. Period masks a change in the product mix, target market or sales distribution. Period contains claims of unusually large amounts. Longer period serves to smooth out volatility in experience by claims year.